I am very excited to welcome our special guest today to The Calling and the Climb, Taylor Kovar. Now, Taylor has built businesses across technology, healthcare, and finance. He's led hundreds of employees, and now he helps people think differently about wealth and freedom. So I'd like to welcome Taylor. I'm anxious to hear what you've got to share with us today. Welcome to The Calling and the Climb.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Well, let's start out. We've talked about you leading these businesses and your experience in leading employees and so on. I want to focus on the transitions
Okay.
in different stages of your career.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that you grew up I believe in a barn, a converted barn or something. Explain that.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town, in Moscow, Texas, more
Okay.
cows than people. And so our first house I grew up in was on a mile-long dirt road, and it was in a converted barn.
Yeah.
And not a barn dominium, right? So not a
Okay.
barn
Yeah.
dominium,
Not
a
that
literal
glamorous.
converted barn.
I got it.
I mean, I have vivid memories of a child and cows breaking into the house, right? And
Yeah.
and hogs breaking in. Yeah, converted
Wow.
barn.
Okay.
So come a long way since then.
And really, your first work experience was in a manufacturing environment?
One of them, yeah.
Yeah.
So, my dad was a millwright at a manufacturing
Okay.
plant, and his role was the summer we graduated high school. Me and my two older brothers, we had to go work in the plywood mill
Ah,
to see kind of what he did to put food on the table, and really it was his way of pushing us to go to college,
yeah.
and it
So,
worked. Yeah,
okay.
it worked.
Well, let me ask you, so those formative years, how did that background shape your view of leadership?
Yeah, oh man, of leadership. I think it taught me a lot about the person I wanted to be. So I think we all have this goal and dream of wanting to do more and be
Hmm.
more. And having a bunch of different jobs growing up, and then having parents who would give the shirt off their back, even though they weren't rich by any means. I think to me taught me just that I want to treat people the way that I want to be treated.
Okay.
My mom always said, "Be a friend that a friend would want to have." And so when I got into leadership roles, it was like, well, how would I want to be treated in that situation? Because I have been in those situations. If
Hmm.
I'm the one, the low grunt, or I'm the one having to work over, how would I want to be treated? Or how I want to be
Hmm.
communicated with? And that has really set the tone for everything I've done in my career.
Okay.
I have a saying is, be the example.
Yeah.
Don't just set the example; you be the example
Good. Yeah.
of what you want. So, yeah.
So you went on you've had several companies you've started, you've sold, and so forth. Um, what is the one thing is different about being an owner versus an employee?
Oof. You know, um, I've been both in a lot of different capacities. And I think what most people don't realize is the stress that comes with being an owner. I know everybody has stress in their jobs,
Hmm.
especially as you get a career and you're answering to people and doing things. But as an owner, I never realized kind of the pressure of, hey, I have 250 families
Mm,
that are dependent on me. Not just my family,
yeah.
right? Not just my wife and
Yeah.
kids. I've got 250, 350
Hmm.
families who are depending on me for a paycheck and for them to have food on their tables and for their kids to go to college one day. And that pressure was something that I couldn't dwell on a whole lot because it really was it would do a number to my psyche at
I can
times.
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to me, that was probably the biggest thing
Hmm.
is there's a lot more responsibility.
Hmm.
I didn't have a boss to answer to, but I had 350
Yeah.
families that were depending on me to make sure their mom or dad got home at 5 o'clock and not
Yeah.
at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So they could spend time together, and
Mhm.
they had availability to be at ball games,
Mhm.
and they still had a good, healthy home life. And obviously a paycheck.
So can you remember a particular moment early in your career as an owner, as an entrepreneur, where you realized it dawned on you this is different?
Yeah,
Can you think of an
yeah.
example?
I've had obviously a number of different businesses, but we had bought a healthcare business, and what it was supposed to be, just me kind of being a silent investor, more or
Hmm.
less. Very quickly me running the business,
Hmm.
and we were about 3 months in, and the business was in Houston, and I lived a couple hours away, and I remember getting in my truck, coming back home from Houston, and just realizing I have bankrupted myself, my family, and then all these employees. That this
Uh,
was done. I'd gotten way over my head. And that moment of, I had about 2 hours drive home, and from the moment I cranked to the truck, it was pity party,
Yeah.
of like,
Yep.
I can't believe I've messed this up so much, to well, nobody else is going to come to my rescue. Like, I have to fix
Got to do
this,
it.
right? Either I can go home and cry myself to sleep and be, woe is me, or buck up and man up and figure out a solution. And that 2 hour window really laid the ground for
Wow.
me, for
All by yourself,
all
right?
by myself.
Yep.
Just in the truck, and I was praying and
Hmm.
crying and worshiping, and it just, through these next 2 hours, really grew me into, hey, no one's coming to your rescue. It's either you or it's nothing.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously God, right? But I mean,
Right.
obviously God. But I had to do my part,
Yeah.
and so and that's really where I went from there on out,
Yeah.
was, hey, all right, God, it's me and you.
Come on.
Let's do
I
this. You
love that.
called me,
I love that.
right? You called me, equipped
Absolutely.
me. Let's do this.
That's
And
great.
that was really a defining moment of my life.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So you've mentioned your faith. And so I'm just wondering how faith influences your decision making, particularly when others, depend on you, like you were talking about the families or whatever.
Yeah.
So how does faith enter into that calculus of how you deal with that, how you make decisions?
Yeah, I grew up in a very faith-based home.
Yeah.
I don't want to say religious. I think sometimes we fall back to that, is religion, but really it was faith-based.
Hmm.
When my dad passed away, his obituary said he was a member of Moscow First Baptist and Eastview United Pentecostal. So I
Uh,
mean,
you covered all the
you got
bases.
covered. We were covered. So very faith-based, not so much religious. But that was always it. My parents were, they lived paycheck to paycheck, but they were going to make sure they paid their tithes first,
Yeah.
right? And they would
Yeah.
get a straw off their back. And so as I grew up, it was always, hey, God, you're in charge here, right? I've read the back of the book. Like, I know I can't take anything with me,
Hmm.
right? I know at the end of the day that you win, right? And
Hmm.
I just want to be a good steward of whatever you put into my hands. And I'd
Hmm.
like to be able to say I'm batting 1,000 or 100 there. I'm not,
Yeah.
right? But
Well,
I definitely
we
try.
strive for it.
We
Yep.
strive for it,
Yep.
right? We strive for it. And so really, that's really what it is I want the faith. I want my faith in God and what He has for my family to
Hmm.
lead everything that we do.
Hmm.
And that's been a really big piece. I had a pastor a number of years ago. He had a saying that only servants go to heaven.
Ah,
And that has stuck with
that's
me. You
good.
talk about Jesus came to be a servant, and so we actually had it on the wall of our office. I
Yeah.
had it on my computer for a long time. That it was just a driving force, always there in front of me.
Yep.
Only servants go to heaven.
Yeah. That's great.
And Jesus Christ
I'm gonna
Himself
put
can
that
come
up
to
on my
wash.
wall. That's a
It's
great line.
great. It really is so good. And it really keeps everything in perspective. I'm
Yeah.
here to serve. I'm here to serve
Yeah.
whoever God puts in my life.
That's good.
So yeah.
So obviously, your perspective going from employee to ownership, entrepreneurship, being responsible for a lot of people. What's something you think that only business owners understand about responsibility? And you've been on the other side of the fence.
Mm.
What is it that you only kind of understand once you're in that position? Can you think of anything?
I go back to, it's me, right? Like, I don't have anyone else to lean on.
Okay.
And when I talk to a bunch of business owners, that's usually one thing I hear from them is, man, I feel like I'm all alone. There's nobody for me to talk to about the
Hmm.
stress that I'm feeling. Even
Hmm.
my spouse, even my
Okay.
spouse, they're
Interesting.
not in it day in and day out.
Hmm.
Like, they can kind of know, but they're not fighting those battles 12 hours a day or the middle of the night.
Hmm.
And it can very much feel like an island.
Hmm.
As a business owner, you can kind of feel like an island. I think that's where some really great, groups have popped up, or where people can kind of collaborate together,
Hmm.
some mastermind groups.
Hmm.
But I think that was really eye opening to me as I became an entrepreneur, and then as I grew, was, I'm on an island.
Yeah.
There's no one else that can relate exactly like I
Hmm.
am. And ultimately, I've got to figure this out.
Yeah. I'm sure there's stories. I don't know if you maybe can think of one where you did feel alone, and maybe you reached out to God, and God came on the scene, and you knew it was Him.
Yeah.
If you got
Oh
one that
man.
comes to mind, you probably have a bunch of them, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I go back. We had a business where we had $500,000 in payroll every month, or yeah, about every
Yeah.
month. And I remember one time looking at the bank account and knowing I've got payroll due in 4 days, and the money's not there.
There.
It's not there.
I've been there.
You know, and
Not 500,000, but I've been there.
and it no matter the number, it hurts.
Yeah.
And I remember looking and saying, God, these people have already done the work. I don't want to. I don't want to cheat them out of that. Like, I want to pay them. I'm doing the very best that I can. But I was all alone.
Yeah.
And it was 4 days away, and I talked to a friend, and he was like, "Man, just go to the bank, get a line of credit. They'll take care of you." And I was like, "Even if they give me $100,000 line of credit, it doesn't move the needle, right? It just doesn't move the needle at those numbers." And we had a random person showed up, called me a couple days later, and was like, "Hey, listen, I just feel like if you guys need some money right now, I just sold something and I have some cash here, and I'm happy to send it your way. I think you could do some good with it."
Wow.
And it was like,
Whoa.
"Thank you, God." I mean, there was no answer, no reason this person called me.
Does that give
Um,
you like extra faith? Like there's other type
oh yeah,
places, obviously, but like I can make it.
I can make it. Yeah,
Right.
that God, you got this,
Yeah.
right? There was nothing I could
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
It's in your hands. And I'm here for it. So
Okay.
yeah,
All right. Now you've experienced what a lot of business owners dream about, and we've all been there, and we dream for the big payday.
yeah, and being invited on the calling, it's fine. Okay, so you're right. I am living the dream right now. I mean,
Talking about actually going through a successful exit,
oh
and many
yes,
people, myself included, we saw that way out in the distance, and we're like, "That's the finish line.
yeah.
That's the finish line." You seem to say something a little different. It's more complicated than that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What surprised you about selling your business?
It's the dream,
Right.
right? And
Sure.
you won the lottery, you've achieved it, you've retired, you've whatever. And it is a thrilling time. I mean, it really is. Kudos if you've ever sold a business.
Mhm.
Kudos. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs. I was fortunate where I had a mentor speaking in my life when I first became an entrepreneur, and his thing was, "What's the exit plan?" And that was one of the first things he told me. He was like,
Wow,
he's like,
that's
"It's
great.
great you're starting a business. Great you're doing this. What's the end goal?" And we always think, "Oh, let's way down the road when I'm
Yep.
60,
Yep. Yeah,
whatever."
right.
And he was like, "No, like it can happen anytime.
That was smart.
What do you want to do?" And so that's helped carry me
Mhm.
through. But he didn't give me any advice for when I actually sold the business. And so even though it was thrilling, and I remember like refreshing the bank, right? Like refreshing it, like until that money actually comes through, right? Until it actually comes through, I don't
Absolutely
know.
no. Yeah.
But just I remember feeling so excited, like, oh, we have this, and man, more wealth than I ever dreamed we could ever have. And then almost as quickly oh my gosh, I hope I don't lose this. How do I not lose it? Like the stress? It immediately became a different type of stress.
Okay.
But it was a phenomenal experience, and obviously a high that I chase right even
Mhm.
now. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do at times because you go from building, 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 and you're always on to you've gotten this reward to then what's on the other side.
And had you thought about what was on the other side? Okay.
I had thought, oh, well, I'm going to live on the beach,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm going to be Phillip Hampton. And so, no, but I had this picture, I guess, of what, quote unquote retirement or what that would look like. But I hadn't sat down and really thought, okay, in real life, we have three small little kids. We're not packing up, moving to the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Like that's not happening. So what does life really look
Mhm.
like after? And it came on pretty heavy and quick.
Did you struggle with identity after the exit?
I
Like, who
did.
am I? What's my
Yeah.
purpose? Did you struggle with that?
I really did. I didn't think that I would because I still had a couple of businesses. I owned a number of businesses, but
Yeah.
I had a great team that ran the day to day of the other businesses, and so we sold this large healthcare business. And I went from having almost 400 employees, always being on, and we were massive growth plans. And I remember we sold at the beginning of December 2021, and a couple weeks later, maybe 2 weeks, I had taken the family and we went to one of these Christmas light places. And I remember standing in line and I kept grabbing my phone, right? Like I kept grabbing my phone
Habit.
and pulling it out. And I would just look at it and I put it back in my pocket and I'd pull it out and I put it back in my pocket. And my wife was like, "Why do you keep looking at your phone? Like, what's going on?" And I was like, "Nothing. Like, nothing's going."
That's the
Like
problem, right?
that's the problem. Like I'm used to there always being a message
Yeah.
and people always needing me and there's always being an answer and being the one that had the answer.
Sure.
that was
And
needed.
they're not calling anymore.
Nobody's calling anymore.
Right.
And that was really a big identity crisis of, hey, how do you go from being this very successful entrepreneur to I'm just some dude. I'm an unemployed 35-year-old,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and that was really, really difficult. And not one that I had expected as
yeah.
much. So, yeah.
How how long did that turmoil last, would you say?
Uh, it was off and on. I mean, I won't lie, it's probably still off and on 4 years later,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
to some degree. But it was really pretty heavy there for about 6 months.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize it at the time. You know, I had counseled and consulted people through business exits before from a financial standpoint.
Mhm.
Um, but that real life side of it of not being needed, not being on call, not waking up and having this is what I'm
Mhm.
solving today or
Mhm.
building today, um, was tough.
Yeah. Was that tougher than the financial part of it?
It really was.
Okay.
I don't say tougher. It was different. It
Okay.
was just different
Yeah.
tough. It was one that it was unexpected.
Yeah.
I felt, so I remember we had one of this amazing road trip, took the kids on this amazing road trip in early 2022. And I remember being on that trip and waking up in a hotel in the middle of the night and my pillow being wet with tears.
My goodness.
Like 2 a.m. And I'm shaking, like, just shaking.
Wow.
And I'm like, God, I don't understand. Like I fell asleep fine, but it was obvious something was going.
Wow.
Internal turmoil was going on. And I remember just waking up and my wife was standing there, or a little bit that morning, and she was like, "Hey, it's gonna be all right." All right. And I'm just like, I don't understand why I'm feeling this way. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I've got more money than I ever
Wow.
thought. We're we're in Hawaii, right? Or we're in Alaska. We're living this awesome life. Why am I feeling this way? And that really set me on a path and a trajectory to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so a few months in, I realized, hey, I need to go talk to somebody. And so I wanted to talk to other entrepreneurs, who had been there, done that. So
Uh-huh.
I looked online and remembered a few people that I admired and called, and they said, hey, man, come on out. And one of them, I'll never forget, I went and chatted with him, and we'd only briefly met each other. And we're sitting there at his conference table at his house, and he listens to my little story, and he's like, well, I can tell you what's wrong with you, idiot. And I was like, okay. He said, you retired. You retired at 35. You have no purpose.
Yeah.
We're not called.
Ah,
We're called to do stuff.
that's
We're
great.
called to be creators. We're called to work.
That's good.
And he was like, you're retired at 35. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You can't retire from something. You need to retire to something. And by retiring to
That's
something,
good.
you do something.
Yeah.
And that really, from that moment forward, really changed my mindset. And
Yeah.
the grace of God, it's been a lot better since
That's
then. So
awesome. Now,
yeah,
now I mean, you continue on. Now you counsel people on financial planning,
yeah,
and I've heard you before. You've talked about in terms of wealth being freedom or wealth and freedom. Explain
yeah.
that. How wealth leads to freedom. Explain
Yeah,
that.
so I'm a CFP, right?
Okay.
I've owned an investment firm for a long time, and I've always worked with business owners. And but since then, so we've really shifted our business model, and I really work with people preparing for an exit, right? And through an exit.
Hmm.
But one of the questions I get asked is like, what's the number? Like, what is wealthy? Are you
Hmm.
wealthy? And I've changed my definition. It's not having X dollars in the bank, right? Because I know having X dollars doesn't equate to peace, right? And I have clients and people we work with who have hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's still not peace. And so I've changed my definition to wealth is freedom. Wealth is freedom, and it's really freedom to pursue our true calling, our true passions,
Mm.
and truly what God has for us. I
Hmm.
think so often we miss our calling because we're busy doing the work, right?
Yeah.
Even when Jesus called the disciples, they were working,
Hmm.
and they were like, we're fishers, we're going out fishing. I want to make you fishers of men,
Yeah.
right? And so often we don't have Jesus Christ himself literally come up to us and say, drop the net.
Yeah.
Hey, Philip, drop the
Yeah.
spreadsheet
Yeah.
and come do what I want you to do. And so that's really how I define wealth now. It's like
Yeah.
I want that freedom to pursue what God wants from me
Yeah.
and where He wants my talents that He's given me, and whether that's a profitable endeavor a monetarily profitable endeavor, or it's a more of a spiritual
Yeah.
profit, right?
Yeah.
Or even something I won't see until
Yeah.
the other side of glory,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
God, I want to pursue what you have
Yeah.
that way.
So it's interesting you talk about your calling. People overlook their calling
Yeah.
because of their work or whatever. And now in my case, and I talked about it, and I think you've expressed it as well. My calling was to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and to do that work. But I think the difference is that calling doesn't end when you exit.
That's true.
That's when the real
Yeah.
calling comes forth.
Yeah. You're
Right?
right.
You
You're
have the
right.
freedom to pursue that without looking at P&Ls or balance sheets or whatever.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that
I agree. Yeah. And then that calling continues into a different version of that.
Yeah.
It is maintaining its stewardship, and it's going and training and teaching
Yeah.
and helping others.
Yeah.
And it's not so much inwardly focused as it is, what can I do to serve the ones around me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you counsel with entrepreneurs all the time. What mindset shift do you think entrepreneurs need around leadership and money?
Ooh.
Thinking about that differently or
Yeah.
how that interacts.
I think I told a lot of entrepreneurs who trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, as entrepreneurs, we're always striving, right? We're always tracking
Competitive.
metrics, and we're competitive, and we want to grind. But at some point, we have to realize we're not going to be the richest person in the world, right? And even if we are, it's not going to last forever. And why would we want that, right? And so a lot of what I talk with entrepreneurs about is changing how we think about money and time.
Mhm.
And I have one of the first things I ask new clients is why are you working? It's one of the very first things I ask, right? If you come to our office, why are you working? And I get the standard answer. I want to provide a better life for my kids
Mhm.
than I had,
Mhm.
right? And we start to break that down and say, well, what do you consider a better life? What is that? Well, I want to be able to travel. I want to give them gifts that they want. I want to be able to do this and that. And we start changing that to, well, let's break that down even more, right? Is it a better life for them if you're able to coach their baseball games, right? If you're able to be at the recitals, if you're able to go to church with them, right? Or is it you're providing a better life because they can have the fanciest whatever? And to me, that's a really big. It's hard to take a step back and say, I'm going to put family or God or relationships or whatever before business. One of the things that we did early on is I'm very jealous of my time after 5.
Okay.
Right. And so as a young financial advisor, you're supposed to be at all the business after 5s, and you're supposed to be at the country club, and you're supposed to all these events after 5. And I knew very early that's my family time.
It's good.
Right. And so I understand I may not manage as much money as someone else, or, have as many clients or whatever else, but this is what's important to me. I want to make sure my family knows that. And I'm not saying I don't ever do those things, right? But they have to be really important for me to do that. And so that was a really big thing for us was, hey, 5 to 8 is family time. 8 to 10 is me and Megan's time. That's changed as kids gotten older. But that has helped center
That's good.
what we do.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So you've had you're still a young man, but you've had a very adventuresome journey already. So I'm just curious, currently in this current time, right now,
Yeah.
what is God teaching you about leadership right now that you're just learning or refreshing or
Yeah, man.
can you think of anything in particular?
I feel like God is teaching me this moment to listen and to be, I don't want to say content, but be content.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for an entrepreneur because we always want more,
Sure.
right? Before we turn this on, you're like, hey, the metrics for the podcast and this and that. Like we want to know, right? And we want to do these. We want to check the bank account. We want to check this and that. And God has really taught me it's okay, right? Be content. Be content with where I have you. Not that I don't have more for you, right? Not that there's not more doors opening, not that there's not this or that. And God has blessed our family tremendously. But that there doesn't always have to be the next thing.
That's good.
And that's been really hard as a leader because leaders grow and leaders strive. And I think there is, but I think that can come in a bunch of different formats.
That's good.
And I have found more peace saying, oh, I don't want to go hire 50 employees. And that's a push. Right? I want to hire these people and do this. And I think God has really taught me a lot about leadership with just, hey, grow where I planted you right now.
It's good.
I know you think, your buddy has a private jet and this one's doing this and this is doing that. This is the story I have for you.
It's good.
This is the Taylor Kovar story,
I
not
like it.
Jimmy Johnson's,
Yep.
right? Taylor Kovar's.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
I can't believe our time is almost up. This is great.
Man, it's already over.
Really? No,
Oh,
I've got
man. Okay.
one last
Yeah.
question. So, what would you tell someone that may be watching right now that they're in a hard season? Maybe it's an entrepreneur, maybe somebody just starting out, or maybe somebody they're right in the middle and things have gone south.
Yeah.
They're in a hard season. Taylor Kovar, what do you tell them?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a few things depending on everybody's situation is different. Everybody's situation is different. Not everybody is called to be an entrepreneur. So I will say that first off, right?
Sure.
I know that can be hard to hear for some people, but not everybody's called to be an entrepreneur, right? So if that is truly your calling, one, have you prayed about it? Have you fasted? Right? I think we forget about that a lot of times.
Sure.
And there's a reason God says when you fast, not if you fast, right?
Expects you to.
It's
Yeah.
expected, right? But then also know, hey, pray, fast. But at the end of the day, you got to do something, right? There has to be action. And I think God not only expects, he demands action on our part. And so I can sit around and say, woe is me all day, right? I started that drive back from Houston. Woe is me. Outside of my control, this person did this that ruined me. But where am I going right now? And so I think now I've just had a conversation with a guy very similar to this. And he was like, I just don't know what to do. And I said, have you asked ChatGPT? I was like, have you asked the internet?
Yeah.
I mean, and he was like, no. And I was like, well, you have all these tools available now, right? I mean, how are you telling me you don't know if you haven't even
you haven't tried?
You haven't tried. You haven't did some action. It's not just going to fall in your lap. And so I would say, hey, look at what are your actions, right? Are you being busy or are you being intentional with your time?
Yeah.
And what I find out with a lot of entrepreneurs who are going through a hard time, and we all do, right? I'm not saying this across the board, but a lot, especially new ones, is they're busy, but they're not being intentional with their time.
It's good.
They're not true action. And so pray, fast, and really take a close look at your time.
Good advice from a really good guy, a very successful entrepreneur who's still building, still creating, still fulfilling God's calling. Taylor, I'm really glad you came on today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the invite. I'm excited to be here. Yeah.